Seated. Before we introduce the city council candidates, I'd like to just share a few thoughts about serving on the Lago Vista City Council as a council member. Most of you realize that this city was built by volunteers from the very first inception as part of the NRC development. It was the service organizations, churches, social clubs, etc., that were all volunteers that had come to this setting to enjoy the offered amenities, and they worked to build this city from just scratch. Subsequently, the LVPOA administered the community with volunteer boards and committees before the city was officially formed in 1985. So serving on the city council remains a volunteer position even today. And serving at the municipal level is much more rewarding because when you're at the municipal level, you get to see the results of your efforts and your decisions. You're much closer to what's happening. You get more input from your constituency. So today's environment for the city council is much more difficult than what I incurred when I was on city council from 2009 through being mayor in 2016 and 2017. It's much more difficult because the state has started to put in more restrictions on what cities can do. Even though we are a home rule city, lots of times when they pass a state legislature bill and they're aiming it at a large city, such as Austin, any city that's in the county along with them also has to adhere to those rules. And we have been restricted in a lot of ways in the last 5 years. So I commend these candidates that are willing to service, and I hope you feel the same way. Now let me introduce the candidates that are here today, and they are seated and presented in the order that they appear on this fall's ballot. First, council place number 2, Adam Benefield. Would you please stand? Okay. Place 4, Norma Owen. And place 6, a contested place, we have Steve Liebel and Paul Prince. Thank you, candidates, for your commitment to the community. And we'll now get started with some of the format for this evening. At the start, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to introduce themselves and explain why they are running for the Lago Vista City Council. That's the first. Then this next section is a series of questions, and the candidates will then be asked questions about different subjects and issues. Each question will be given to the candidates on a slip of paper, and the audience will see each question on the drop-down screens, and there will be no questions or interruptions allowed from the audience. Now, just as a point of reference, these questions were all submitted to the chamber. Some were about the same issue, and then, therefore, we combined them into a single issue. Others were for a specific candidate. So in total, there are 7 questions for all, and there are 2 questions for a single candidate. There was one question that was submitted about any candidate having filed for bankruptcy. And the application for city council position does not ask that question. It only asks about felonies. So we were advised not to keep that question in the group today. Then finally, at the end, each candidate will be given a maximum of 2 minutes to summarize their positions and outline the value they would bring as a member of Lago Vista City Council. And I might say, candidates, for the sake of time, if you have already answered your question sufficiently, you may relinquish the rest of your time for the rest of the group. Okay. Lago Vista candidates for our introductions. That's 3 minutes per person. Present your background and motivation in applying for a place on the Lago Vista City Council. As the slide says, no questions or interruptions will be allowed from the floor. And we'll start with Mr. Benefield and then proceed to the left through Mr. Prince. You may begin.
Hello, folks. I'm Adam Benefield. I'm running for Place 2 for City Council. I pretty much grew up in Austin, Texas my whole life. Moved to Leander in 2001, bought a home, lived there for about, 20 years, and then finally decided to move to Lago Vista in 2021 like the rest of everybody else. And I've been here ever since. I've got my wife of 26 years in the stands, my campaign manager, my son, who's 18 years old. His name is Hiram. And he did a lot of theater right here in this room as he graduated from Lago. I currently serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission and also on the Building and Standards Commission. And the motivation for me running is throughout my life as an executive or CEO, I've always been able to surround myself with people who are smarter and brighter than me. And my talent's not always been being the smartest in the room, but rather hearing good ideas, seeing good ideas, and being able to implement those ideas. And there are some really talented people on City Council right now, and there are a lot of talented people in this room, and there are a lot of talented people in this community. And my motivation is to take my talent, which is listening and understanding, and then help make the very best decision that the citizens want for the community. So there's a lot of work ahead of us. If you've been following, all that's happening, there's a lot that needs to happen. And I believe that my talent as a blue-collar, hard-working executive is exactly what our council needs to fill the gap to help fix some of the deficiencies that we have. Thank you.
I'm Norma Owen, and of course I'm going for Place 4. I first want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Shalane Marion for her service, and am so humbled and grateful for her mentorship and her support for running in her seat. She's done a tremendous value to our community. Now, as for me, I've been blessed. I've been blessed over the last 20 years to actually be in a position to help cities across the U.S., I will say in the Sun Belt rather than in the Rust Belt, especially small communities create opportunity pathways for their residents and especially the children growing up in those communities. And I felt that that was something that might be of benefit here. I'm also blessed because I'm supported by my husband of 38 years who's in the audience tonight. And I have wonderful children, but I have 10 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren for whom Lago Vista has now become a legacy and a safe place and a home to hang out with Nani and Grandpa. So that is definitely a motivation for me. My reason for running, as Adam has eloquently said, we've got some issues facing us right now. And I believe that some of the experience that I've had with those other communities, the colleagues that I have across the country that I can pull on tap to solve really complex problems can be a benefit. I think that my top 2 issues are water and fiscal stability. And that's something that I've really dug into and want to ensure that we are blessed, that we can prosper, that we remain stable into the future. And really thank everyone here in the community. I have been also blessed while working and learning about our water, our infrastructure, how we do thread the needle in order to pay for it so that we don't expand the burden on our taxpayers. Oh my gosh, so many wonderful people in our community who have lent their time and volunteer efforts and their expertise to help educate me and guide me. And I look forward to working with them in the future. But I am here really to serve the community. That's what I do. So thank you.
My name is Stephen R. Liebel. I am your local candidate for Place 6 City Council. I'm excited to be here tonight, running for City Council to represent each and every one of you. Like many of you, I've attended Meet the Candidate events in the past, but never did I think once that I'd find myself standing or sitting on this stage going through a job interview for City Council. Let me start out by telling you about myself and why I'm running for City Council. I've been married for over 20 years to my sweetheart, who is the love of my life. She is my best friend and by far my most trusted advisor, and I see you right there, sweetheart. You all may know Faith from her many volunteer activities locally, including the Lago Vista Women's Club, the Lions, and her roles with the Lago Vista Players. It's all in the family for us, as our son and daughter live here also, making this fair city their residence as well. We're expecting a grandchild soon, and I am totally vested in this city. And I care deeply about the local state of affairs. Sundays in our household are days that are centered on faith, family-style dinners, and quality time spent together. Currently, I serve as the president of the TNSR and am an elected TCRP precinct chairman. Oh, by the way, did I mention I still work full-time? Once elected, I will bring my 40-plus years of hard-earned experience in capital improvement projects. As this city moves into executing on capital infrastructure projects over the next several years, I will bring my strong utility infrastructure background and experience to the table. I see our city as being on the verge of absolute greatness, becoming a first-class destination for residents, local businesses, and visitors. To accomplish this vision, I have created 6 governing priorities, providing myself a roadmap, giving me both guidance and direction to achieve my vision for Lago. In my spare time, I serve Lago Vista in my role as a director on the Lions, and I volunteered my time with the Lago Vista Players. In closing, please see my Stephen R. Liebel for Place 6 Facebook campaign page, which has detailed information regarding my governing priorities, a biography, and my proposed Taxpayer Bill of Rights platform. Finally, I want to ask each of you to trust what you see in regards to our city's state. In asking for your vote, know that I represent change and I represent progress. Lago Vista, with what's at stake in this election, each of you have much to gain in voting for me and little to lose. So please, vote wisely, Lago. Vote like it matters, because as you can tell, the state of our city, your vote really does matter. I'll be back soon.
I'm Paul Prince, and I want you to consider a couple of things as you think about casting your vote. Number one is experience, and I not only have 4 years of experience on City Council, but multiple committees and commissions that I've served on in the city. I've been a resident full-time of the city for about 7+ years, and a homeowner for just over 20 years now. And not only do I have that experience, but I bring a demeanor and a sense of leadership to City Council that I think is important. And I'm thankful to a number of citizens who have gone out of their way to thank me for being a voice of reason and a voice of calm on City Council. Number two, I'm a guy that pays attention to details. I'm an engineer, I'm a spreadsheet guy, I really focus on the budget. So think about experience and attention to detail. Let me give you a little bit of background, and I'll start in college. So I went to college in Abilene, Texas, Abilene Christian University, where I met my wife, and I win the battle of how long I've been married. So I've been married 42 years, so I've got the largest number at the table here. Myra and I married in 1982, and then we went off on other life adventures, graduate school, various jobs, having a couple of boys. We moved back to Texas in 2004 so that I could work for Dell in Round Rock. And not only did we buy a home in Round Rock, but we also wanted to have the ability to come out on Lake Travis on weekends. And so we bought a home in Lago Vista, and I, to this day, still have that over 20 years later, the same house that we bought in 2004. We, in Lago Vista, when we came here full-time about 7 years ago, it was because my job at Dell had ended and I'd done a startup for a while. We decided we would settle out here full-time. We really put down roots. We joined a church here. We started a business. We started an art school on Don Drive. You may see Darling Art School. Before it was Darling Art School, it was our art school, Cordovan Art School, that Myra and I started. And as part of that experience of starting a small business in Lago Vista, I learned not only how difficult it is to start a small business, but some of the hurdles that it takes to start a small business in Lago Vista. And I said, you know, I've got some experience both with this and with my previous career and my demeanor, my analytical nature. I think I can help, and I want to help. And so I started volunteering, and I was appointed first to the Building and Standards Commission, and then Board of Adjustment, and then Planning and Zoning. And then after a few years doing that, then I ran for City Council. I think that I've really had the opportunity to add value at a City Council level, and I thank the folks that are watching closely that have seen that and have reached out to me and are putting their yard signs out saying, you're the guy that we support. And so I look for your vote as well.
Thank you, candidates, for that introduction. I did want to point out that we do have Justin manning the timer over there for the length of time, and Tricia's ready to yell at somebody if they go over. The next question is a general question. This may have already been addressed in your introduction, but can you briefly share personal accomplishments that would benefit the community if elected? Please include any leadership roles in organizations such as churches or community groups, and provide details about where these organizations are located, as well as your educational background and how these experiences support your ability to serve. And again, you may have already covered that, and if you want to take your minute to briefly summarize those again, you have 1 minute per candidate. We'll start with Mr. Prince and proceed to your right.
Thank you, Dale. So several things. Let me go back to business time frame. So as I said, I'm an engineer. I'm an analytical guy. I spent a little over 20, almost 25 years in computer engineering field, working for Intel and Dell. At one point in my career, I managed a team of 175 people and had an annual budget of about $20 million. So I'm an analytical guy that has experience running budgets. I know how to prioritize, decide what things you can do and what things you can't do, and how to make those kind of decisions. And I think that maps very well onto the city. Locally here, there's a couple of areas that I'm really involved. I did mention that we had a small business, which we since have sold. And the reason, by the way, that we sold that business is that my wife and I were thankful to say that a little over a year ago, we had our first grandchild. And so we have, I'm about to run out of time, but we sold that business, but I'm running a school locally as well. And I'll stop with that.
I think my greatest accomplishment is my family, of course, my wife, my children. To me, that's number one. Number two, of course, is our family is a family of faith, and we've been involved with the church for quite a while. I have background of being a children's church pastor. I have background of being a church treasurer. I have background. My favorite job probably whenever I was in the church was going out and taking the bus and picking up underprivileged kids and bringing them to church every Sunday. Those things are very meaningful to me, and those are some of my greatest personal accomplishments. In my professional life, I started out as a groundman on a crew. I worked myself up to an apprentice. I became a journeyman. I became a supervisor, a foreman. I became a general foreman who had 3 crews under me. I became a general supervisor with 10 crews under me. And then I ran the biggest distribution district in Southern California. I jumped over to transmission, and I got a transmission substation background where I ended up running the biggest transmission grid in the company as well. So I have a tremendous amount of utility experience, which I can bring to bear in regards to my position on the council.
Well, I'll tell you, I was going, I didn't talk about the things that I was actually on here in Lago and what I've been doing here since we landed in 2018. I said I was blessed of being able to consult with communities over the last 20 years, and during that time, and in the early stages, right before that, I was also a small business startup consultant. And so I feel like that business background and that work with communities, that crossover, gives me an interesting perspective when it comes to economic development and looking at communities. When I got here, I jumped into the Economic Development Advisory Committee, thinking, oh, that'd be a good place for me to kind of come and kind of jump in. And then next thing I knew, I really got interested and took a position on planning and zoning. I'm also a member of the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee here in the community. Now, not, being that I'm a can-do kind of gal and like
Time
to
is
get
up.
my feet wet.
I don't think I can point to one specific thing or one great accomplishment. I think, like Steve, I was a very young father. At 21 years old, I had my first child, and I think I was 26 or 27. I had my fourth child. So I'm 48 and have my youngest at 18. I mean, that made me grow up very fast. And over the years, I've employed hundreds of people, and I have served at every level from PTA president to Little League coach, all the way to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And this step on City Council just seems to be the next progressive move.
Thank you again, candidates, for those answers. Now, I think I'll ask Marnie to get the questions handed out to the candidates before I read them from the screen as well. This is about the Rusty Allen Airport, and it's a two-part question. So, do you view the Rusty Allen Airport in Lago Vista as an asset or a liability? What steps would you take to ensure effective management, maintain its high ratings, and secure continued funding for upkeep from the FAA and TxDOT? Additionally, during recent budget discussions, it was noted that the airport POA has not paid the annual maintenance fee outlined in the covenants associated with their property. How do you plan to address this situation and ensure that airport users contribute their fair share towards maintaining this important city asset? This will be 3 minutes per candidate. I'd like to start with Ms. Owen and go to the left.
Well, again, I have a focus on economic development, and one of the things that I recognize very quickly in this community, that the Rusty Allen Airport is an asset in my mind. I think that being that it is the only other airport in Travis County that is public, that it has the opportunity to be a place that can help during crisis. That just recently I saw on Facebook where they had actually brought in supplies and were taking them out to North Carolina. And oh my gosh, and also thinking back in terms of our rating for fires, hopefully that just never happens in this area, but what a benefit it would be. In addition to that, looking at the opportunity pathways, I see it as an asset because they have the Young Eagles flying program that they've created here in Lago. And so bringing up our future pilots, I think, is important because we have such a shortage of them now. We need that to start early. So I do see this, the Rusty Allen Airport, as an asset. In regard to the recent budget discussions, I did note that they had not contributed as they had in the past. I understood that there was some confusion as to the agreements. Now, I will admit, I am not an expert in this area. I am doing my best to study, but I really do leave it to the experts to guide. The Airport Advisory Board has some wonderful people on it, and Rob Durbin has done a great job in terms of being the current liaison. I believe we are on the path of helping to mend relationships and move the airport forward, and I feel through that we can go ahead and get the property owners to go ahead and contribute what they say that they will. They've actually offered their contribution to continue. We just need to get past some of the paperwork to make us financially viable for grants and stuff like that here recently. With that, I will pass it on.
Trustee Allen Airport is a tremendous asset. It's a gem. It's unique in so many respects, as Norma has talked about. The relationship between the city and the airport has suffered recently. There's been some issues that have come to the forefront, that have come even out onto the citizens. I understand that some steps have been taken recently by our city manager to write a letter to TxDOT to try to address some of the concerns of our airport community, which would seek to secure some additional funding for some much needed projects that haven't occurred over quite a long period of time that are needed. I support that 100%. I'm glad to see that there's engagement now between the city and the airport community, as well as understanding that that's a city-owned airport that needs to be taken care of and maintained in such a way that it can flesh out to be the asset that it really is to everyone involved. As far as the issue of not paying the dues that were due, this is all part of the dysfunction that's gone on in that part of our world. I think when talking to the airport people who live up in that way, as I've had an opportunity to do quite a bit recently, I think that a lot of their concerns, needs, and desires can be met fairly, and there's no reason for them to feel divided from the rest of us. They're part of our city, an important part of our city, and they can certainly contribute to our economy in ways that no one else can. And they have a lot of great ideas on how to do it. I'm hoping that they get some time to talk to us through the different, their association and then through the airport committee that we have at the city, to start laying those ideas out before the council so that they'll be received, be vetted, looked at, and possibly implemented, because they have some great ideas on how they can increase revenue up there fairly quickly. There might be some limitations on what the city can do. It's yet to be seen, but I think it's a matter of will. I think it's a matter of having an overarching purpose and fitting a vision towards that airport and what it can be for our community. I see it as an asset 100%.
So I have an advantage here because Rob Durbin is currently the liaison to the Airport Advisory Board. Before that, I was the liaison to the Airport Advisory Board, and I've been in all of the discussions over the last 4 years on the airport, which my fellow citizens here have not had that advantage. So I've got some information probably that they may not be aware of. The airport is absolutely an asset, and for the most part, over the years that I've been aware, the airport has been about a break-even operation. And the reason that it's been a break-even operation is because that we're able to qualify and apply for grants from TxDOT and FAA in order to do repairs and improvements on the airport. And so that's why, frankly, that we have an airport that's a roughly a break-even operation, and that is an asset, great asset to our community. Unfortunately, over the last few years, there have been some breakdown of the relationship between the city and the FAA and the airport POA, and we've been actively trying to repair that, and I would say that Mr. Durbin has been the strongest leader on that front, and I feel like I've been the second strongest leader on that front within the council over the last 4 years. On the POA issue, it really comes down to the POA folks feel like the fact that they've been paying these dues has led to some misunderstandings with FAA, and they want that to be straightened out. I was just up there, as Mr. Liebel was as well, on Saturday for the event that they had, and the people that I talked to up there are saying, we're perfectly willing to pay our share and get back to paying that. We just don't want it to feed the issue with the FAA. So, it's a great thing. And the one last thing I'll say, and this is my budget attention to detail, over the last couple of years, the initial budget from the city has said we're going to, you may not know, I should say this, that we sell airport fuel up there. The city actually sells airport fuel up there. And the last couple of years' budget, the amount of money that we were planning to spend on fuel was less than the amount of revenue we were going to get for selling fuel. That was in the original plan from the city. And I said, that is not okay. So I don't know how much we're going to sell, but we can't spend more than we sell. We can't sell dollars less than we're gonna buy. And so I drove that message, and that got changed in this year's budget as well as last year's budget, and that has helped, has been a factor in keeping the airport at a break-even operation as it has been. And this year, it's not a break-even operation. It shows a deficit of $92,000, which is far more than I want it to be, and there's really two attributes. I think we need to be more efficient on selling the fuel, get more money out of that, even than I pushed for in the budget. And then secondly, the airport POA fees, as discussed.
So I had an opportunity to attend a TML conference about 6 months ago, and they were talking about what assets a city can have and the rare subject of, does your city have an airport? And there was only about 2 or 3 cities in the room that were able to raise their hands and say, yes, we have an airport. And the overwhelming consensus was really clear. If your city has an airport, you are blessed. And as somebody that will serve as place 2, the people at or around the airport should know that I will be an individual that advocates for them, I will help them, and I will ensure that this asset is utilized to the greatest and fullest potential capable. Regarding the fees, if there's fees due, then really what needs to happen is there is so much banter that is going on right now between the POA and the city. Somebody like Rob Durbin or any other liaison needs to just tell them to cut the crap and let's get back to business. And I guarantee you they will pay their dues if they're due.
Thank you for those answers. We are going on to another asset in the community, the Lago Vista Golf Course. How do you plan to collaborate with the current golf course management to further improve the course and help achieve financial sustainability? We're limiting this to 2 minutes per candidate. I'd like to start with Mr. Liebel and come this direction toward Ms. Owen, to the right, to your right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How do I plan to collaborate with the current golf course to further improve the course, achieve financial sustainability? The word collaboration means that one should reach out, should sit down, should listen, should get informed. Until one's informed and educated, you can hardly be activated to make the right choices. And with this golf course, I can tell you what I have to think about our golf course. Number one, I think it should be first class. I think it should be a destination. I think it should be a lot more than it is today. And I think that should be purple post to purple post on that course. That entire course should be top notch and first rate. It's an amenity. It could be a destination. It could be a source of money. But right now, it's got some problems. It's got some issues. Well, things are being resolved as quickly as they possibly can under the current thinking that's out there. We need new thinking. We need new people to come in and try to address this age-old problem. And I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity, nor do I see the golf course as an expense. I don't see it as an expense whatsoever. That's not how I feel. It's an investment. It's an investment in our community. It's an investment in our golf community. It's an investment in all of us. All of us have a vested interest that it succeed, it thrive, it meets the mission of why it's there, and it does it extremely well. And there's a lot of cities that don't seem to have problems with this issue, a lot. And I don't understand why we're not collaborating, not just with our local people, but with other cities of similar size with golf courses, trying to figure out what it is they do. If we have to jump on a plane and go to Arizona and figure that out, let's do it. Let's go to Vegas. You think it's tough to have a golf course here? Try it in the desert. They do seem to see it extremely well. This can be handled. This can be done. It just takes leadership. It takes people who really want to see this happen. I'm that person, I can tell you right now.
So I know the golf course has been a point of contention in the community, but I'll tell you that I see it on 2 fronts. One, that it is something that can be a treasure and an asset, and it is an asset. It's also for those that live here and moved here for the golfing. It's an amenity as well. So there's two fronts to the golf course. I think that yes, I agree with Mr. Liebel about reaching out and looking at other golf courses and cities and how are they doing it? How do they make it? How do they make it go? How do they bring it back? But I think the biggest asset we have right now is our current golf pro. I was able to attend one of the recent golf course advisory committee meetings and really got the overview of what our golf course could be, and in a very much of a self-sustaining way. I also felt like this, along with our airport, as prime assets for potentially tourism, very targeted tourism, high-end tourism for our community, would have tremendous benefits. And so if we are able to figure out how to go ahead and bring this golf course along so that it's pristine, that it becomes what it was in the past. People I had heard came from all over to play on our golf course because of the views, because of the lake views, because of the course itself. I think that it can be just a wonderful, wonderful part of our overall community character. So thank you.
I think most people know that the golf course is also the area where the city distributes our effluent water. And that really is the most important function of that property. It is a piece of land that we distribute effluent water, and just so happen we beautify it so that people can play golf on top of it. Right? So even though our budget may show that we subsidize that golf course $1 million, if that golf course went away and it was no longer there, right, we would still have to pay money to upkeep that area. So I would love to see the golf course make money. I would love to see it run in the black. But at the end of the day, I'm okay spending money on the golf course to make it beautiful, to make it wonderful so people can play on it, but most importantly, make it for an area that we can easily distribute the water. I don't know if there's going to be a question about the irrigation system coming up, but I fully support that we go through TCEQ permitting so that we can increase the water distribution from our current 1 million gallons per day to the 1.5 million gallons per day, and that we continue to be able to utilize this as our way to continue development and the distribution of this water, and do it in a way that makes our golf course first class, so that not only is it a great utility for our utilities, but it also can be a destination place for us to enjoy and play recreationally.
Thank you for those comments, everyone, and Adam, especially on the effluent. I think that's a very important point. I've gone back and looked at the golf course numbers in detail, and if you look over the past 6 years that have completed, we're in a year that hasn't quite completed yet, but the past 6 years that have completed, you may be surprised to learn that on average over those 6 years, the golf course has lost $375,000 per year, because I think a lot of people think it's losing $1 million per year, but it's not. It's a much lower number than that. Is that okay to serve the feature of spreading effluent? Well, I want it to be better. And how do we make it better? I think some of the comments that you've heard from others are the way that we get there to making it better, that if we can improve the quality of the course, and that's the way that we get more people out here to play. So it's a situation where I think that some well-placed investment in the course actually ends up paying for itself, and we get that loss down to a much more manageable number. I also want to just throw out other amenities that we have in the city, just for context. We spend about $200,000 a year on the library. We spend about $100,000 a year on the city swimming pool. And we also have our Sunset Park, where we've been spending about the same that we've been spending on the golf course, actually, over that same 6-year period, about a $325,000 number. So the golf course fits in with these other important amenities, but it has the important attribute of spreading effluent. If we spread the effluent wisely and improve the look of the course, we can start reducing those losses, and potentially, I would hope that we can turn it into a slight gain as well.
Interesting discussion about our amenities. Just as a side note, NRC put all those items in back in 1970, early part of the 1970s, so you would expect that the airport needs some upgrades, but that was the way NRC brought in people to buy property here. And the golf course was put in and to attract people to come buy lots as well. And a lot of retirees moved here specifically for the golf course, and there's nothing has been replaced since then in that irrigation system. It's just been messed around with and expanded and tried to be accommodated, and it's time now to go forward with irrigation. So I fully support all you guys doing that. Now we're going to go to questions for single candidates. I just wanted to tell you, there is a problem with this screen going off occasionally. The bulb in that screen over there is burning out, and it signals the controller, and then this one wants to go out as well. So they have to kind of restart it. So you may have seen it in the audience going out, but then they reboot it, and we have the full screen. So this one that is for Paul Prince. Paul, you just got through talking, but you get to talk again. Councilman Prince, public statements and social media posts suggest that you moved to Round Rock in early 2023 while maintaining a homestead exemption on your Lago Vista property. Can you clarify your residency status, and how do you address concerns about meeting the city's charter residency requirements and potential discrepancies with TCAD?
Yeah, thanks. And there's no secret here. So when I said I was going to run, I explained my situation in a Facebook post. And frankly, before I ran, I went and talked to the city attorney about the situation to make sure that he did not see a problem with it. And he said, well, I can't represent you, I represent the city, but what I see from your situation, there's not an issue, but talk to your own lawyer, which I did and got the same answer. But here's the situation. I didn't move to Round Rock, I bought a second home. There was a time where I said earlier I had a home in Round Rock and a home out here. I'm on the flip of that. And what I've been advised by attorneys is, where's your intent? Where's your focus? So I am focused on Lago Vista. I'm attending all the city council meetings in person. I spend multiple nights a week out here. I'm attending church out here. I'm on a school board running a local preschool. Lago Vista is my home. I have a second home where my wife does babysitting, and that's the bottom line for that situation.
Also, a subsequent single question for Steve Liebel. As the GOP Precinct 281 chair and president of the North Shore Republicans, why do your campaign signs identify you as an independent? Given your role as a GOP precinct chair, where you took an oath to support and campaign for Republican candidates, how do you reconcile this with your campaign messaging? And another little question, which will probably bring a little humor here. Can you effectively communicate by writing concise social media posts of 80 words or less?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me start with that second one first. No. I've tried to put some comic book versions together. I'm trying. I'll work on that. Let me put it that way. Getting back to the first question regarding GOP precinct chair and president of North Shore Republicans, my campaign sign identifies myself as local and independent. And what I'm trying to convey with my messaging there is that while I am an official in the Republican Party, and the president of a local North Shore Republican Party, I intend to govern independently. I intend to represent everyone. I intend to represent all the citizens, and that's what that's the message I want to get out to the greater community out there. I'm not looking to represent one party. I'm looking to represent everybody in my role, and that's my way to send that message to the community. And by the way, I could have left that off if you think about it. I could have put, I'm a yellow chimpanzee. I do have free speech on my political signs. I can put anything I want out there, but I chose to be transparent, I chose to be open, and I chose to send the message of what I'm trying to send, that I will act.
Time is up.
independent. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your answers to those two questions. This question is about City Hall, and I hope you can read it. It's pretty lengthy. It's pretty much, we needed to include all this just to really get you a perspective on what the people asking the questions were. Morale within City Hall is reportedly at an all-time low. There have been public accusations by council members regarding staff and other council members, and inappropriate comments have been made about the city manager on social media. Several key department heads and employees have left, with many expressing concerns about dysfunction within the council and a lack of support and trust. How do you believe a city can function effectively without a strong relationship between the council and staff, and what steps would you take to improve this relationship? The second part of this issue is, recently the council discussed a new ordinance that aims to clarify the boundaries between policy and operations, outlining the expected behavior of both council members and staff. This ordinance was introduced to better define roles and alleviate frustrations on both sides, with the hope of reducing the recent wave of staff departures. Do you agree with the implementation of this ordinance? Why or why not? I have down here that we're starting again with Miss Owen and coming to the right so that Mr. Benefield is after you, and then going back over to Paul.
I'll say that I am not privy to a lot of the goings on behind the scene, but have been very active in watching, you know, as a participant at the council meetings over the last couple of years, and have seen the morale and, you know, the concern amongst the council members and the staff. I believe that part of the challenge that we have as a growing city is learning how to interact and collaborate with each other through this growing process, but also to be able to show transparency and answer questions in a way that give the council members the ability to make decisions on very deep information, and at the same time, I will say, not overburden staff. I believe I've been in a position where I actually was an intermediary, an organization with my company in between universities and the residents in a community. Within that, what I found was that I was very definitive in terms of the outcomes and goals for which my organization would provide, and on what would the staff provide from the universities, and what the expectations were of the students coming through. We not only made those goals and those objectives very clear, we also made sure that they were clear enough that we didn't have to get too deep into the conversation, asking question after question to be able to get to the bottom goal. And I think part of what we have here is we need additional ways of communicating to the public so that we are very clear in terms of what is being accomplished at the city level. When there are questions from our community, I think they need to be answered. And more importantly, when a city council member is trying to act on your behalf, they need to be able to get the information that they've asked for. Sometimes that leads to further questions. So I'm going to go into, I watched as they went ahead and implemented the current ordinance. I have some concerns that between the city charter and what this ordinance may bring. I have some concerns in regard to the overburdensome on the city manager. But again, I look to study this further and find ways to make this work for everybody, to include the staff, so we can bring our morale back, but yet also
Thank you. Time
have
is up.
council feel like that they can serve you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's disappointing to hear that there's a level of dysfunction between city council and staff. As the CEO, if there's dysfunction within my organization, I always have to ask who's at fault. I may not be personally responsible for the dysfunction, but I must take responsibility for that dysfunction. And when I serve as place two, I will be looking at the guidance of our mayor, Mayor Sullivan, to be the leader that he has been voted into office to be. I will try to support him in every way possible. Just because an employee leaves doesn't mean that wasn't in the best interest of the city. I do believe we've lost some really strong talent, which is disappointing, but I also believe it offers us an opportunity to rebuild with new people that understand and see the vision of the new council. So when asked, how do I see things to improve, I will be a leader to our mayor and with the other city council members to, as we hire these new city managers or as we hire these new development service heads, that they can look at us for leadership and guidance. And you may see, I'm not afraid to tell somebody to cut the crap. And if there's a fellow council member out there that's behaving poorly, I will be first in line to advise them that it's causing damage than it is good. Regarding the policy with interactions between members of city council and staff, no, I don't agree with that policy. I think city council has to have an open communication with members of staff. Staff has to be able to interact with the city manager, but staff also needs to be able to interact with city council. And I would like to see that ordinance changed so that it allows city council and staff to have a more cohesive relationship. Thank you.
This is a heavy question, and I'll tell you the reason that I am running again at an emotional level is this situation that I recognized 4 to 6 months ago when I was deciding whether I was going to run or not, that things were headed in a bad direction, and I really view one of my roles on council is to try to be a balanced person and to be an intermediary and try to keep calm. And so I let quite a few of the staff know that I was going to run again. And one of the reasons I was running is I wanted to make sure that they felt supported and we could work through this situation. And man, I got a lot of strong feedback from staff. Unfortunately, it's headed in a southerly direction pretty rapidly recently. But, you know, as Mr. Benefield points out, that's an opportunity to improve, and things change, and we bring in new employees, and we reset. Regarding the ordinance that we did pass, really the point of that ordinance was to try to improve this situation. There are some who think it might be a little better than the situation where before. There's others that would have the opinion that it doesn't accomplish what it needs to. I would welcome improvement in that ordinance or changes to that ordinance going forward, or changes to the city charter. We've got a charter review committee going up, and what clearer definition of the roles between city council and staff I think would be helpful in the city charter. Ultimately, I know that it's an unhealthy situation. The reason I'm motivated to run is to try to help it, and I think that I can be a significant portion of the solution going forward because of my approach to people and my balanced approach to this situation.
I'm going to stand up. I'd like to reach out to everyone on this. Dysfunction is a really good word for what's occurring under our current leadership and the relationship with our city staff. Our city manager, gone, not good. City attorney changed out. Finance director gone. HR director gone. Others have left. I'm really concerned about what's going on. We are at an inflection point. We are at a turning point in this city where if we don't get our hands around it, we don't get some fresh new blood in there, we get some people who can work through this and figure this out. Always what lurks around the corner from dysfunction is anarchy, waiting there to take its turn. And if we don't get this under control quick, that's what's going to happen. When anarchy comes on this city, what's going to plan then? What is our plan? Are we thinking City of Austin's going to come in and save us? The county is going to step in, maybe the state? We've got to do something differently than what we're doing, which is why I'm running, which is why the fresh people are coming in to try to help out. As far as that ordinance, I strongly stood up and opposed the ordinance. It looked to me like a blatant case of just covering up what's going on between the city staff and the council. There were some council members who spoke up against it as well and took a no vote on that. The thing about that ordinance that everyone needs to know is that the Charter Committee ultimately has the final say. Taxpayer time and money was spent on that ordinance when the Charter Committee is the one who should be addressing that issue of the relationship between city staff and council. No one else has that job. When I asked the city attorney, or the city attorney was asked as a result of one of my questions, what's going to prevail, the charter or the city ordinance? The answer was the charter. So why did we take that exercise? What was the point in that? I believe it was nothing more than to provide cover for the leadership we currently have. We need to change things quick. We cannot continue to see the exodus of key people leaving our city as quickly as they are for the reasons they are. Something needs to happen, and we're at that inflection point, people. You are all leaders. You need to understand this. When you are talking to people you know, and you are going to go out there and vote, keep in mind where we're actually at and who's been responsible for getting us there. Thank you.
Does anybody need to stand up and take a little break? Anybody in the audience? Let's take about a 2-minute stretch. We're yep. timer is 2, 1, 0. The 2 minutes is up. Please take your seats. Okay. The next slide is Gateway to Getaway. I think Marnie already handed out the questions. Council introduced the phrase Gateway to the Getaway as part of a marketing campaign, but is the city putting the cart before the horse? Is there a plan to provide the amenities needed to truly make Lago Vista a desirable getaway? With ongoing discussions about the airport, the golf course, and no clear plans for park improvements, what quality of life amenities do you believe the city can offer to both residents and tourists? This is 2 minutes per candidate, and we'll start with Mr. Liebel and proceed to your left to Paul and then back around.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gateway to the getaway. I still live like vacation, but I guess I can go with this. We do need a marketing campaign, of course, but then we have to have the amenities. So I understand how some might think that that is putting the cart before the horse. What is it that we can do outside of our airport and golf course to provide amenities that will make this a destination city? Not only for tourists, visitors, but also our family members and friends and the residents of this town. My answer to that is, what can we do? Anything we set our minds to. All we need to do is turn around, shoo away that thing that's stepping on our tail, and get moving forward. There's nothing we can't do when we put ourselves together and come up with a coherent plan of what our vision is going to be for the future. Cities have done this all over the country time and time again, many like ourselves. As long as we continue to look within or continue to re-elect the same people, we're going to get the same results. What is the best predictor of the future? It's our history. What we need are new ideas. Those ideas are out there and they're readily available. We can create amenities that will make us a destination city. And as far as parks go, let me ask you guys something. Has anybody seen a pocket park created in how many years? How many years has pocket parks been in the budget, taken out, put back in, taken out, put back in? I'm telling you, this is the thinking that needs to change in this city. Only we can do that. You, the people, vote in your representatives who will take action. Won't just continually put $30,000 in a budget, then take it out and put it back in year after year after year. Actually sit out there, break ground, and build a pocket park that becomes an amenity for that particular residential neighborhood. That's a small place to start, but it's a great step forward that we don't have today. What can we do? Whatever we set our minds to, you just need the leadership.
So I think, and Ms. Owen is the expert on this, but I think this phrase is actually gateway to getaway. I don't think it has the word "the" in it. And it, it's a vision. And I like the statement, and I think it makes sense. We've talked about all these things, the golf course and the airport, and made clear statements about where we think we should go with golf course and airport and how important they are. We also have things in this area that are not in the city. The Balcones is an amazing resource, and we're the gateway to Balcones. So I think it's a great phrase. I think that we need to continue to invest. I know that citizens don't want to spend a ton of money on improving the parks. That's something I hear all the time. So, investing in parks at an appropriate rate is, I think, what most citizens want. If we want to talk about pocket parks, it was not in the budget this year, and I'm actually the guy that got it back in there. And so does that mean that the city is going to implement it this year? I mean, it should be done. The fact that it didn't get done last year was a city staff oversight. Council let them get away with it. And there's 7 of us on there, and we can't let them get away with it again this year. I think that looking as, wholesale change is ignoring the fact that sometimes it takes time to do important things. We can't spend $1 million a year on the park. We have been spending at the rate of about as I said earlier, about $325,000 a year on the park, about $350,000 a year on the golf course. So we at the city level continue to try to make these things work, make them healthy, make them important, make them desirable. You know, I think this is a good phrase, and we should be proud of it and move forward with incremental and appropriate investment levels over time.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Prince. I think it's a great phrase. Actually, I first heard it from Norma. Norma and I often sit outside of City Hall before Planning and Zoning Commission, and we kind of banter back and forth and kind of talk about what's about to happen. And she shared that phrase with me, and it only took me about 1 second to realize that was a pretty great phrase. So I think you did a great job there, Norma. You know, what amenities do I think? I think Lago Vista is a destination spot. I mean, we have Lake Travis. I mean, what greater destination can you have than the lake? I mean, we don't even have to do anything for that other than be good stewards of the water and make sure we preserve it and keep it clean, and that we love it and take care of our wildlife, and that we take care of the beautiful trees. I mean, when I come in from work, you know, I'm all stressed and wound up, and I just drive to Lago and I just feel good. I don't think that we need to do anything to Lago to make it a better place. It's just great the way it is. But I do love things like what the Chamber did last night. I think the neighborhood night out activity was fantastic. I thought that was really a great activity. I would love to see the city maybe spend a little bit more money and make it even better. I love 4th of July. I would love to see Lago Vista have one of the greatest 4th of July celebrations in the area and bring in surrounding towns that could come to our concerts and eat our food and stay at our Airbnbs and partake of the goodness that Lago Vista has to provide. I would love to see really great celebrations and really great amenities that Lago has to offer to boost our tourism.
On Gateway to Getaway, that is a phrase that I blurted out one evening when amongst several friends. The reason I said that was because if you look at Lago's history, it's just a hoot. I mean, we had bootleggers? Yeah. Out here, we had cedar choppers coming out here because they were getting away from oversight in the city. And the Dude Ranch that we had, many people came out here to get away. And I said, well, this is a gateway to get away. So I will say that Anna Jondro, good friend, said, Norma, you know, that's got something to it, and it really speaks to what Lago is, to what you're saying, Adam. You know, when you come out here, you really don't want to hustle and bustle. You don't want a whole lot. You just want to be able to unwind. Now, the reason that we went ahead and brought this before council was that if we wanted to really introduce this potentially as a brand for our community, which also presents a vision for development that comes and to the area, then we got to have the domain. And so there was when you start talking about the horse before the cart and all of that kind of stuff, we needed to go ahead and purchase a domain to protect it. And so that's why it went before council. And we didn't want to get too deep in the planning if we couldn't get the domain. So that was just the beginning of it. And a big part of that was because we've got balconies, we've got really cool Udoscapes, we've got Arkansas Bend, we've got the lake, and all of that. It has a lot of potential. Now, in regard to the amenities for the city, you know, we don't have a lot to spend on our amenities, but I will tell you that the conversations between public-private partnerships, the grants that we have sought out, has
Your
hope.
time is up.
Thank you.
Now into a discussion of how do you pay for any improvements, right? This is entitled City Taxes and Debt. The first part is, with the recent tax rate increase and discussions of taking on $50 million in additional debt, what is your plan for managing this debt without further raising property taxes or utility rates? Second part, do you support using debt for the city's infrastructure needs? And if not, what alternative funding strategy would you propose, or which projects would you deprioritize? And this is 3 minutes per candidate. We're going to start back with you, Mr. Benefield, and go to your left.
I do not want to take the credit for what I'm about to say, but fortunately the individual in this room is here, Councilman Shane Somm. So, Councilman, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but when it comes to taxes, there's only two ways to deal with taxes. You either have to bring in more money or you have to spend less. And one idea that Councilman Somm presented is that when department heads come to produce their budget, they need to come 5% under budget each year. Come to the table 5% under budget. Then advocate. Tell us why you need the additional funds to either break even or, worst case, go over last year's budget. When we looked at the discussions of the budget this year, it was kind of just like a, hey, what do you need? And hey, what do you need? And what do you need? And everybody just kind of came together with a number and they added it all up and we kind of pencil whipped it a little bit and that was our budget. But if the department heads understand that they have to come to the table under budget and that we have an expectation for them to stick to that budget, and if they want to go over and above that 5% deficit from the previous year, they're going to have to justify it. So, point one, we need to stop spending so much. Just that's the way it is. I mean, and number two, we're going to continue to grow. You know, there's still going to be developers that are going to come here. There's still going to be builders that are going to build houses. Our population is going to grow, and as we grow, we're going to collect more taxes. And as we collect those more taxes, and as we spend less, hopefully that will bring us into a balanced budget that we do not then have to impose any additional burdens on you, the taxpayers. We are being beat up by school taxes, county taxes. Enough's enough. We can do our part, and I believe come November, there's going to be a council that sees and believes that in a balanced budget and reducing our tax burdens, I don't know of any particular project I would deprioritize. I think that's the department heads to come to the table and to propose what they believe are their most important priorities versus ones that they can push off until future budgets allow. Thank you.
I'm going to jump a little bit more based on what you started, Adam. You know, you spoke to increasing revenues and decreasing expenses. So we really are at a crossroads. Our infrastructure is at a point where they call it aging out. It needs to be replaced. Our streets, our water. So we're at a need place, not at a want place. So if there's any deprioritizing, it's taking care of our infrastructure and our needs first, and then going into our wants. With that being said, I'm going to further say Council Somm has been an enormous advocate for us in going after grants. We have not done that in the past. There's a lot of money. We paid a lot of taxes out and not received anything in. And so we need to go ahead and utilize our connections to say, okay, we're a small community and we're at this point in time. A lot of other small communities have received millions of dollars. I think Marble Falls recently, I believe, was $5 million, Council Somm. $5 million that our taxpayers taxpayers don't have to pay. Well, we've already paid it. We're just getting it back to do what we need to do to bring our infrastructure up to par. In terms of using debt for the city infrastructure, I mentioned a blessing, and I'm going to state this for my husband. He has worked tirelessly to give me a tool to model out our decision making for the city. Can we afford more debt? Can we not? If we make this decision, how much growth do we need? And so at this point in time, what I have expressed to my cohorts here, whenever I could, is that the budgeting doesn't come just one time a year. We're going to start early next year, so that we are running scenarios, we are running what do we actually need, what can we put off for now, so that actually what I would like to see between the reduced expenses, and by the way, going after tourism to bring in a few more of those tourist dollars, again, so that our taxpayers don't have to pay them, so that we can do this without having to do very much more on the bond front, because otherwise that does mean increased utility rates. And on that, I really don't want to see those increased utility rates, because that becomes a tax that you can't take off on your tax return. So I think that we've got a needle to thread, and we're going to start doing that early next year.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's talk city budget a little bit. It's very important to all of us because it's our property taxes that are paying for it. Government raises no money on its own. Number one, if the largest line item in your budget is your debt, that can be a problem. Why is that a problem? Because it means you have less money for normal maintenance and operations. If you look at this year's budget that was recently passed, you're going to see that the M&O piece of the budget is down and the interest and sinking is up, which means as the city takes on bond-related debt, it has to make an annual payment. What is that? Last year it was about 2.2 million. This year is 4.6. What do you think is going to happen? That's why I proposed my taxpayer bill of rights. It's called, that's what it is. The first proponent, our plank on my taxpayer bill of rights is a 2% property tax cap, period. That's it. Next, create a budget that I call real. A real budget for a city is based on a formula, a hard fiscal rule. Nobody gets to change that hard fiscal rule unless there's an emergency and the council overrides it. They have that option. But the hard fiscal rule is a budget cannot increase year over year. It can't exceed the formula. And here's the formula. Austin area, CPI, our inflation, times population growth averaged over 3 years. There's your hard fiscal rule. You don't get to exceed that. With the 2% property cap, you're stopping the inflow of money. With the hard budget rule, you've also got a restraint on your budget. Now it's going to flesh out like it needs to. After that, what begins to happen? Departments become more efficient with your money. They start making better decisions. They're not going to do the type of budgeting that Mr. Benefield talked about. They're going to have to budget harder. They're going to have to get smarter with your money. I'll guarantee you the third plank of my taxpayer bill of rights is I will not pass a certificate of obligation bond right now. There is no way. Nor would I vote to put one before the voters. We have enough debt, so much debt right now. How are we going to continue to make those payments as revenue is dropping? Why is revenue dropping? It's dropping because growth is stopping in this city. You see that in the budget. There's not as much money coming in from growth as there once was. That's not happening. I want you to know where I stand on this, and I want you to know that I'm standing up for you. I'm standing up for the taxpayers, for the residents, and the businesses which are suffering as a result of these property tax increases year after year, and a budget that continues to grow. Balancing a budget at the beginning of the year is nothing. Here's what matters to you. At year end, was there a surplus? That's the question you should be asking. How much more money did you take in than when you passed your balanced budget to start your fiscal year? Or were you going the other direction? Were you in a deficit? Because either one should bring real questions from citizens.
Well, there's a lot of misunderstanding of the budget in there. So let's talk about some facts. So in 2017, Mitch, when you were mayor, there was a CO bond that was passed, and that year the total tax revenue from property tax was about $6 million. And the total debt that we had in 2017 was about 40% of that $10 million. The CO bond that we just passed with our increasing debt, in fact, gets us to that exact same number, 40% of our tax, which is $10.4 million this year. 40% of our tax is going to paying the bond debt. Now, I ask you this, if you're not going to pass a CO bond, how are you going to fix the wastewater? How are you going to fix the water plants? You're not going to pay for it with cash. And so if you want your roads fixed, if you want water services, if you want wastewater services, the way to do it is to do bonds that you can afford to pay. And in fact, we are in a situation where we can afford to pay those bonds. Now, in February of this last year, I did a deep analysis and I brought it before council and I presented it publicly on what we could afford to do in bonds. And I made the case that we could not afford to do other things that we had discussed, such as a city hall library expansion and golf course redesign was another one that was on the table. And I made the case, and council agreed with me that we had to focus on our wants, not our needs, not our wants. And so what we did was we passed a $26 million CO bond, and $12 million of that 26 is going to a 3-year program to fix all the roads in Lago Vista. Now, people have been living with potholes on their roads for decades. They want them fixed. That's what we were hearing as city council. If we paid out of pocket for repairing those roads, it was going to take another 10 to 12 years to get it done. We took a bond out, and we, in fact, have a 3-year program to get all the roads done. Wastewater, same thing, it's in there. We know that we will have to do another bond in order to do water. And if we're not going to do another CO bond, then we're not going to be able to expand the water, because you can't pay cash for something that big. When you bought your house, chances are you didn't pay cash for it. You got a loan on it because that allows you to buy your house now and pay it over time. The other big factor about doing CO bonds, which I think is important to consider, as we grow, new people come in and take advantage of the benefits of these things through the repaired roads and the new water infrastructure. If we do a bond, they help to pay for that in future years. If we pay out of pocket, they get the benefit without paying. So, if you really understand the numbers, we're in a good situation.
Thank you.
It's
Your
not a
time is
panic
up.
situation.
The next issue that we're going to explore here is turnback and the future PDDs. The current council has spent 3 years working to balance protecting adjacent property owners from the negative impacts of new PDDs, planned developments, while addressing issues from previously approved high-density developments. Moving forward, whose interest will you prioritize? The developer's interest or adjacent property owners? This is 2 minutes per candidate, and we'll start with Mr. Prince and work our way to your right.
Everyone has property rights. So individual owners of plots have property rights. They could build a home on their lot. Developers that have a large lot have property rights. But what everybody has to do is they have to be responsible and respective of the impact on their neighbors. I think turnback is a great example that has happened in the last few years, the best example in the city of Lago Vista, that the developer came in and said, we have existing rights to build 722 homes on this lot, and we're going to do the city a big favor, and we're only going to build 523 homes on that lot, and here's here's all of the things that we want you to allow us to do and how the property lays out. Citizens came out in droves to say, please do not let that happen. That's a terrible plan. Don't let it happen. After many meetings at Planning and Zoning and City Council, what we got to, and I actually did an analysis where I said, what is a reasonable number of density and number of homes for this property? And based on my analysis, I came up with 349. Paul Roberts, it turns out, did an analysis making different assumptions, got almost exactly the same number. But at the end of the day, we got to a much lower density development, got a lot of things done for the neighbors that they wanted, and the bottom line for me is the neighbors in the area there, especially on Surrey Lane, who were the most impacted, said thank you for working. We didn't get everything we wanted, but thank you for working to pare this down to something reasonable. And my campaign signs are in their yards, and they're wearing my shirts because they respect what I did for their on their behalf.
No, we're coming this direction. Mr. Lebo?
Thank you. Well, the question is, I just want to call this out. It says that who will you prioritize, developers or adjacent property owners? Obviously, that's the horns of a dilemma. Choose one, you get hung up. Choose the other, you're going to be hung up. The reality is, the way the process is supposed to work, we go right down the middle. We represent the interest of everyone. We don't pick and choose. We try to come to compromises, which happened in this case. A lot of people worked very hard to make that happen, and a good end result occurred. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's protecting everyone's private property rights. Bottom line is, this was a good, turnback was a good ending, and there's work going on for future PDDs as well to make sure that happens as well. The one area that I think we need to think more about is that when we enter into agreements with the developer on the front end, what are they meeting the expectations of the zoning and permitting processes that are in place? That's important. That's where a lot of work has gone on recently to make sure that those documents are updated and where they need to be to protect the interest of everybody, including the developer who comes in and the local property owners who may be impacted by the plan development. Bottom line is both, right down the middle. That's our job. We're supposed to be neutral in what we do. We're not supposed to favor. We're not supposed to show favoritism. The one issue that I have is what I'll be on the watch out for if elected council is I'm going to be standing firmly against anyone having to pay for improvements that have nothing to do with the project. That is taking someone's money, and that has to be guarded out against as anything else that we're doing out here. So that's my response. Thank you.
So in looking back at some of the historical PDDs that we are working with today, Lago Vista was just looking for any kind of growth to help take care of the city. And so I think there were some agreements that were entered into that today we are now feeling the impact of that and trying to bring back into the fold so that the negative impacts aren't so big. We do have some real constraints in this city, and that is actually going to, in my opinion, constrain how much more developments could come to the area. I mean, we've only got so much capacity in terms of our water systems. We've really got to watch our traffic. 1431, is having more accidents, so we've got to do those traffic impact analysis. And so I think just from that alone, first things are, how are you going to help mitigate these things that we already know that exist, right? We can't bring on big developers. I also agree. I don't think it needs to be an either or. I think we need to work toward both sides being property owners. We did some really good things as a city, and the city council put in the interim growth management policy. And part of that was to have a conversation before we got too far down the road with the neighbors. Now, I think in the beginning what we were so who are the neighbors? All of Lago, or are they the immediate property owners around there? There's some clarification on that. But in the end, we learned from Turnback how to do those negotiations. And I'm going to call out real quick Louise Madigan and Rachel Rich for being very active and informed
Thank you.
citizens,
Time is
and that
up.
made this better. Thank you.
I believe Paul Roberts was the one that authored the some of the recent changes on the interim growth policy, but Norm and I, serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission, have actually already started to make changes that were eventually adopted by City Council. One of those changes was that on PDDs that required amendments, that no longer did it have to just be a majority vote, but it had to be a supermajority vote. So one may ask, well, why is that important? Well, the reason that's important is you have to have a higher threshold of City Council voting to approve those modifications or changes. So instead of having to only receive 4 votes, now you got to get 6 votes. And so developers have to produce a better product. They have to make more concessions. They have to do the greater will of the people so that their product is more cohesive to the adjacent lots. I think that was a big change that's already happened. The other thing that was a part of that is reviewing old PDDs and determining whether or not those PDDs were still valid, and if not, taking those rights away from old PDDs that have had no progress or no development or growth. So I think those are good things that have already happened this year. When it comes to prioritizing, I agree with Steve that there is a delicate balance. Developers are property owners, but we also have to listen to our citizens and have to make sure that the developers are building what's cohesive and holding them accountable to the impacts that their developments cause to our traffic, to our schools, to lights, so that they're not just coming in and building a bunch of homes and then dumping the burden of all these additional expenses on the tax-paying citizens.
Well, that brings us to the end of the actual questions that have been submitted by the public for us here this evening. So now we are to the end of the candidates all giving us a summary, a 2-minute summary, summarize their positions and outline the value they would bring as a member of the Lago Vista City Council. And so at this final thing, can we start with Ms. Owen and proceed to your right, and then loop around and come back together?
Really appreciate that. So the 2 things on my mind right now are all things water and fiscal stability. That's my focus. Without water, we're in trouble. We don't really have a community, we don't have a way to sustain here. So I want to make sure that we have water, number 1, that our infrastructure brings us water, and that we can deal with the wastewater. Secondly, in terms of fiscal stability, making sure that we can pay for that without overburdening our taxpayers. That includes looking for monies outside of just regular, what they call ad valorem, or your property taxes. I am what they call a credentialed foresight professional, and that is that I actually project out 20 to 30 years. And here recently, I've just been looking out for the next 10 years. If we can thread this needle for the next 10 years, we've gotten through this cycle, we've brought our aging infrastructure back up to snuff, we've been able to do it without burdening or taxing our people out of the home, I call that a win. In addition to that, I'm a listener. I really do want to hear from the public and have been active in the community. And the nice thing about that, when I'm out there, especially in the Lions Club, is that I'm able to interact and hear what people think. Not afraid to reach out to me at the grocery stores when I've been out there, and even running into people at the restaurants. So I'll just say, let me know your thoughts. That's the way things get done. I will be someone that will represent you and have you be heard. Thank you.
I hope to be able to say three things in my 2 minutes. Number one, I'd like to make sure Mark, who said the opening prayer, he understands that I thought it was a great prayer. It was very beautiful. I think it set the tone for the meeting today. I think, Mayor Mitchell, I think you've done a fantastic job as always. I watched the last few of these on video the last couple days preparing, and I think every time you do a really, really good job. Jennifer at the Chamber, I think you do a class act every time on all your activities. I think you're a real asset to this community, and thank you for doing such a great job tonight. Number two, I want to publicly make very clear that Mayor Sullivan, Shane Somm, Rob Durbin, Norma Owen, Paul Roberts, and Mr. Prince or Mr. Liebel, that I am going to be working with you side by side every single day fighting the fights. You can count on me. You can talk to me. I will be with you shoulder to shoulder. I don't expect to agree or disagree with you all the time, but one thing you can count on is that I will be there to support you, and I will be there to advocate for the best interest of Lago Vista at every moment of the day. And, you know, like I tell my kids, they can always count on me to advocate for them. You know, sometimes I've looked at my kids and thought, my gosh, what were you thinking? And I have to go fight the fight that I know that they're wrong on. And I want the citizens to know that I'm going to do the same thing for Lago Vista. I am going to fight, whether I'm at a TML conference or I'm at a city council meeting, I am going to fight your fight every single day. And I know I'm running unopposed, but that doesn't mean I don't ask for your votes. I ask for your vote as a concession to affirm that you believe that I am going to be prepared and ready to fight that fight on your behalf. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam and Norma, for making several really good points there. The focus on infrastructure is a really good one. So that's what we need to be doing, and I will be doing. Roads, water, sewer, getting those things done, getting them funded in a way that we can afford. And I certainly agree that we need to be aggressive in going after grants and other funding opportunities so that the amount we spend out of pocket on those is kept in check. That's job number one. I want to come back to, you know, I've got some experience here both on the city council and my approach to city council that I think is important, and I would ask for your vote so that I can continue bringing that. And Adam, you led into something in your comments there that I've had a logo on my campaign for the 4 years that I've been in office that is respect. And respect at the core, and that's respect for citizens, respect for staff, respect for other council members. And I try to operate that way, and around that respect is a circle of how I make decisions, and that is listen to everyone and learn from what I'm hearing, and then make a decision, and then explain where that decision comes from and why I did it, and just kind of follow that process of transparency. So that's what I will continue to do, is operate in that mode of respect. And then the last thing, of course, is I've got a depth of budget and knowledge on budget that just is not common in the city. And I think that's a value, and I hope that you will see it the same way. And so I ask for your vote as we approach the election.
Lago Vista, while you might not be sure if I am your candidate at this moment, just know there's no pressure to decide on who you will vote on right now. But I do ask that you keep an open mind and just lean in. My Lago Vista Taxpayer Bill of Rights proposal is designed to reflect the needs of local taxpayers. Taxpayers are in need of an unwavering champion who will hear them, listen, and act upon their cries for relief. I pledge to have your backs, and I will do anything possible to help residents and local businesses in providing as much tax relief as is possible. If you're sitting around waiting for my opponent to vote against raising your home or business taxes, stop city fee increases, or even vote no on approving another city budget increase, you might as well wait for your cat to bark. My governing priorities as your councilman are as follows: world-class public safety, fiscal responsibility, aesthetic appeal, livability, innovation and prosperity, and we shall become the employer of choice. Too many friends, neighbors, and businesses have already voted. How? With their feet. They've left town, leaving those of us who are still here feeling just a little bit uneasy. How many empty houses are for sale? How many local businesses are shuttered? When thinking about the state of our city, a word comes up, and we've already used it tonight: dysfunction. We talked about the finance director, our development director, the city secretary, our HR director, and the city attorney who was replaced. My opponent, with little to no noticeable accomplishments, is seeking to be reelected, providing you with more of the same. So choose wisely, Lago Vista. We can and will make it a new day in our city. We will unlock our city's potential. We will put the thrive back in the hive. We'll bring prosperity to everyone. I am Stephen R. Liebel, your local Place 6 candidate, asking for your vote to bring back progress and prosperity.
Well, Lago Vista audience, I think we should give these candidates applause for their participation and laughter. I found it very educational, as well as the new ideas coming out were just wonderful. So to wrap this up, I think the slides are going to show us when early voting is all about, starting on October 21st through November 1st. That's out at Christ Our Savior Lutheran Church. You probably, all of you who are here probably already know that's from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and even on Sunday from noon to 6 p.m. Anybody not know where Christ Our Savior Lutheran Church is? It's on the way out to Sunset Park. Okay. Election day is November 5th, and there will be 3 polling places: the Lago Vista High School, and Darren, what room? Yeah, right here in the PAC Center. In the lobby? Okay, in a lobby and a PAC Center here. And the K Oaks Clubhouse, and the POA K Oaks Clubhouse, and the Community Center at Jonestown. So with that being, I thank you all for attending this 2024 Meet the Candidates Night for Lago Vista City Council. Thank you for attending.